A little bit late, but we are starting here now. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leandro Barcelos, International Trade Coordinator at BMJ Consultancy in Brazil, and I'll be the moderator of the panel today. It's a real pleasure to be here in Geneva in person with some friends here that are watching us in person and with some people watching us online as well. Well, BMJ proposed this panel to talk about digital trade, and I will tell a little bit about BMJ for you guys. Some people don't know BMJ Consultancy. BMJ is the largest international trade institutional consultancy in Brazil. We are based in Brasilia. We have offices in São Paulo and Belo Horizonte in the state of Minas Gerais. And we also have some offices and consultants around the world. So we have offices in Dubai, we have people in Brussels, we have people in Buenos Aires, Washington, D.C. We have people here in Geneva. And one of the themes that we are following in our consultancy in the international trade area is digital trade. And that's why we proposed this panel. And we will talk a little bit about data and how it's been growing in the last 2 years, especially during the pandemics. We have some very good data. And for instance, in Brazil, 150,000 new online companies went online in the last year during 5 months, and 12 million people had purchased it for the first time online during the pandemics. Well, we will talk a little bit about the negotiations that regulate digital trade as well. And now I have the honor to introduce our panelists. I'm with Annabelle here in Geneva. Annabelle is from International Trade Center. She's an expert in digital trade. It's an honor to be with you here. Thanks a lot. We have Daniela Matos from Ministry of Economy in Brazil, and she will speak a little bit about what Brazil has been doing on the theme. And we have Ricardo Lagreca from Mercado Livre. He's the institutional director at Mercado Livre, and it's a pleasure to have all of you here. Well, I'll give the floor to Annabelle. So we will start the presentation, and after I pass to Ricardo and Daniela, at the end we have some time for questions. So please send us the questions through questions and answers part of our panel. The floor is yours. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Leandro. We'll just share the screen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here with you today. I'll be opening this panel discussion by reviewing digital trade through the prism of small and medium-sized enterprises. The mandate of the International Trade Center is to support the internationalization of SMEs, and my team works more specifically with supporting their digital transformation. Here we go. First, a few words on why digital trade is important. We have seen, especially in the last 18 months or so, how digital trade is a key driver of economic development. It is especially so for SMEs. Indeed, e-commerce offers the potential for small businesses to tap unlimited markets across the globe. It can provide significant income from outside the country and helps to build a more resilient digital economy. According to the latest data provided by UNCTAD, e-commerce contributed almost $26 trillion of global trade in 2018, with B2B amounting to over 80% of that trade. Meanwhile, the number of people who transacted online across borders reached close to 1.5 billion. However, while these figures are encouraging and they have certainly evolved over the last 3 years, the large economies dominate the digital trade, led by the US, by China, and by the United Kingdom. As Leandro mentioned, though regions are catching up, despite the recession, the pandemic-induced lockdown has accelerated the digital transformation of businesses across the world. This is true for businesses in Europe, the Americas, but also in Asia and Africa and beyond. According to the UNCTAD report, COVID-19 and e-commerce, a global review, e-commerce's share of global retail increased from 14% to 17% in 2020. But what's more important, and you can see this on the chart on the slide before you on the right, the regions are catching up, and we see that, for example, Mercado Libre, we'll hear from Ricardo later, he'll have more statistics, I'm sure, but they saw a twofold jump in the number of articles sold per day from 2019 to 2020, so that's a huge increase, and we saw similar jumps in volumes witnessed by the marketplace Jumaya in Africa. We saw on the online share of retail increase in China and parts of Central Asia like Kazakhstan. And we saw the downloads of shopping apps increased by a whopping 60% in Thailand. So a real drive in the digital trade across the world. There's no doubt that the pandemic has created untold misery across the world, but we have all heard the statistics from McKinsey and others that the digitization of business operations has accelerated by 3 to 4 years. We even hear 10 years or 6 years in some other statistics. And you see on this graph here, the average monthly visits of 2,000 of the world's most visited e-commerce websites across multiple categories. From the beginning of 2019 to June 2020, and it shows the numbers in billions. And we can see that over the course of 18 months, we went from 14 to 22 billion average monthly visits. So a huge upsurge there. And of course, this is not limited to B2C companies. We see that B2B buyers are showing a strong preference for digitally enabled sales, and are looking for suppliers that provide an outstanding online experience. But of course, there are a number of well-known barriers holding back growth in e-commerce for small businesses in particular, namely poor ICT infrastructure, high logistics costs, unfavorable or absent government policies, limited access to online payment solutions, lack of e-commerce skills, and low visibility on the international stage. So how does this translate on the ground? We have seen for the last few years, and more so recently, small and medium-sized businesses. Sorry, I'm having trouble changing the slides. Radically transform the way that they do business with the help of digital tools. They've been reaching out to international customers from behind their computers, from behind their mobile phones. And I witness this on a daily basis in the projects that I run, from the small handicraft businesses in Central America to some of the coffee cooperatives in Rwanda, and to larger textile manufacturers in Kyrgyzstan. So I'm not going to keep talking about statistics. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what it is that we do with these small businesses and what we hear on the ground from the businesses looking to trade internationally through online channels. So what do we hear? We hear that it's hard, but it is possible. Here we have the example of Kemi Tijani, founder of Wow Braids. She started in 2015, and by 2017, she was exporting over 80% of her products through e-commerce platforms. So thanks to this, not only was she able to sustain jobs during the COVID pandemic, but she was able to create 300 jobs for women in Nigeria. We also have the example of Aya Zanad, founder of Zanad Women's Wear in Tunisia. The business is growing rapidly thanks to a successful digital marketing strategy. She does point out, however, the lack of quality e-commerce training and general digital skills gaps with which she has to contend. So both of these are companies, examples of companies that we support in our ITC projects. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we help them in more detailed, and about our Ecom Connect program here at ITC. So as I mentioned previously, Ecom Connect actively supports the small businesses on their digital journey. Our goal is to connect SMEs to new local, regional, and international markets on live in an inclusive way. This often means working with digitally immature or micro businesses, and it requires extensive support and a lot of capacity building. So how do we do this? We have a four-pronged approach. We do this through expert training and workshops, through advisory and research services, private and public partnerships, and through digital tools and online and offline visibility. And I'll go through these in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the tools that we've developed as part of this team to support our small businesses. We have our e-commerce readiness quiz, which is a way for small businesses to gauge where they are in terms of their digital maturity. We have developed an e-commerce cost calculator, a tool that we use extensively in our training to help businesses select the right platform and understand the costs that are involved in selling online. And we have the Africa Marketplace Explorer, which enables users to explore information on B2C marketplaces activity across African countries. We'll shortly be releasing the Payment Solutions Finder that helps SMEs find the right payment solution for them. And all of these tools and much, much more of our work and our training and free material is available on our community engagement platform called ecomconnect.org that I recommend that you go and see. So before I go into more details about one of our major recent projects, this is a quick overview of the team and the program and what's been achieved in the last 3 years. So we work collectively with lots of small businesses with projects spanning Central America, the Middle East, Africa, and Central Asia. We've supported more than 800 small businesses. We've trained over 130 trainers, and we've developed our ecom community and a lot of material on there, including the tools. And there are now over 4,000 users on the community platform. But I want to anchor a bit more the discussion so you really get a sense for what it is that we do by presenting to you briefly one of our latest projects, the Central America project for women and e-commerce. This was concentrated in 6 countries in Central America and supported 200 women-led businesses from that were looking to export handicrafts through e-commerce channels. This is one of the many projects that we've done. We also have many smaller initiatives which are targeted at services companies, at larger B2B businesses to digitalize their supply chains, for example. But we've chosen this one because it shows a good spectrum of what we've achieved in the region. So before we enter a region or a country, we always try to have some sort of inception phase where we look at the e-commerce ecosystem. It's incredibly important to get a sense for what's achievable. There's lots of differences depending on where we are. So we need to understand what the challenges are for the small businesses. And then we usually start a foundation program that takes the businesses through 4 key modules. And looking at market research and e-commerce strategy, then looking at content creation and optimization, looking at e-commerce channels, payment solutions, and finally logistics, customer experience, and digital marketing. So it's very, very broad. We do this over a long period of time, usually through the train the trainer methodology. So we train the trainers, and then the trainers go out and work with the businesses, and they do a lot of hand-holding, if I can explain it this way, also sort of one-on-one support, and we get them to do some very specific activities so that the businesses, we can see a real progress in the businesses from the beginning to the end of the program. In addition to that, we organize what we call e-labs, and these are specific targeted activities that we usually run with some of the more advanced businesses, and we usually draw on our partnerships with that. And we look to we do this to either boost their visibility or to address specific challenges. And so, like I said, we draw from our large, extensive partnerships that we've developed over the years. Here are some of the ones that we used for this particular project, and they support us in the work that we do. By offering preferential rates, for example, by DHL or PayPal and Payoneer, and supporting us with technical expertise. And so I'd like to show you just one particular example of the work that we did with one of these partners, eBay. And so we worked with them in this here to create eBay accounts with the small businesses. So they received a lot of technical support. We did lots of troubleshooting. Some of the small businesses have difficulties opening the accounts, or the accounts get restricted. So we support them in this way. They get free membership for a certain number of months. And then they are visible under one particular page. So this is the eBay Central America hub. And in this way, we're able to really boost their visibility to international buyers and customer base. So this is an example of one of our beneficiaries who explains how she was able to create an account with on the eBay Central America hub, and that she really learned the importance of working on quality content, on improving the storytelling, and on looking at useful sales metrics. So all these good things that are necessary for successful online trade and to successfully sell internationally. With Etsy, we also worked with a number of players which we brought together to support businesses with free listings, with ad credits, and like I said, with reduced commissions. A lot of our businesses have very high payment commissions, so we work with our partners to try to offer them reduced commissions. Here you can see some of the Etsy stores that we worked on. So you can see our results are, we try to stay very concrete and very tangible for the businesses. We really work with them to improve either the existing channels or to open new channels to target international customers, and to sort of help them troubleshooting any issues that they have, and to sell. And this very hands-on approach means that we get some very good results. So you can see here some of the successes that we've had with this particular project, where we've optimized, we added close to 2,000 new products for these businesses. We were able to drive about 100,000 more visits to the channels that were optimized. We were able to achieve close to 800 new sales that accounted for around $60,000 overall. And although these are incredibly meaningful results and good results for us in our projects, what we hear on the ground is we're often supporting small businesses that are owned by women, or that support women cooperatives and handicraft organizations. And even 2 to 3 additional sales through online channels can really make a significant difference in their livelihoods, in their ability to create these products and sustain their communities. So it's a very rewarding to get these kinds of results with the businesses that we work. So I'll just finish my presentation with drawing your attention to an event that we're holding next week. Sorry, Leandro, to plug one of our events, but we have the Ecom Connect Days next week, where we'll be celebrating the 1st anniversary of our platform. And so I encourage you to join us and to continue this conversation on digital trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. We already have some questions here, but we'll answer that at the end. I don't think we have time to answer all of them. We have 7 questions already, but we'll try to answer as much as we can at the end of our presentations. And I would like to give the floor to Ricardo now.
Thank you very much, Leandro. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank Daniela, Annabelle for sharing this panel. It was very good, the presentation of Annabelle, bringing to us a worldwide perspective. I will talk about Latin America perspective. My agenda for this minute is the following. I will start saying some words regarding Mercado Libre. We'll talk about the impacts of the pandemic related to marketplace, then related to fintech business, and then a brief conclusion, some words regarding next steps. Let's start. Mercado Libre is a 22-year company, a NASDAQ listed company since 2007. We have 18 countries. Our operations are in 18 countries. We are the major marketplace in the region. Our ecosystem includes a fintech business and logistics. We, as Annabelle said, now we have 29 transactions per second in our platform. We have 65 million buyers and 12 million sellers. And our entity has more than 20,000 employees. Our mission is to democratize the commerce and the access of financial services. Well, talking about the pandemic, the first focus of us was to grant security to our safety to our employees to continue to work, because we consider that we develop an essential activity in the region. In this sense, we launched a supermarket session in our marketplace to provide to people conditions to keep in home in safety during the pandemic. We verified increase in 300% in our transactions during the pandemic. And we have 5 million new buyers in the platform. That's very huge. But moreover, the buyers, it's important to say about the sellers. As you know, lots of people lose their jobs during the pandemic. And we offer an opportunity to these people to start entrepreneuring. For example, we have a couple that need to do something in the pandemic. They can start selling in our platform without any barrier. Then, after a period when they will have some adaptation, they will try products, they start to have an activity, in fact, and then we help them to open an entity, to start using our logistics. In fact, we are talking to, for example, the government of Brazil to develop a solution where we would like to provide the opportunity for those entrepreneurs to open an entity in our platform totally online without any bureaucracy. And the result of this is that in this period, we had 175,000 new entities in our platform. It's important to say that 65% of these new entities are family companies, and 25% of these are led by women. It's a good start. We have an opportunity here, but it's important to say that we are providing this opportunity without discrimination. We have an opportunity for everyone in the region. In terms of consumption, it's interesting that in the first phase of the pandemic, it was focused on safety products, health products related to the care of in relation to pandemic. Then food, cleaning, and the third phase was related to home furniture, once people stay at home for home office, etc. And 20% of our sales were related to essential products. So we are very proud to say that we produced a positive impact in the region. And for example, in Colombia, we made a research and half of the sellers said they won't survive without Mercado Libre during the pandemic. In relation to fintech business, it's important to say that 50% of the population of Latin America do not have access to financial services, to bank accounts. So there is a huge opportunity here. And we verified increase of our transactions processed in our fintech that's called Mercado Pago of 104% in this period. We have 40 million users using for the first time our platform to make online payments. 40% of our sellers do not have a bank account. And we provided the first loan in their lives during our platform, Mercado Pago. During this period, we granted 1.7 million loans to those entrepreneurs and consumers that need some support, specifically during the pandemic. And for 30% of these sellers, we are the first alternative to cash. So we can increase the number of customers that they have. Especially, these solutions are focused on the less favored portion of the population. In Argentina, for example, 49% of our sellers change cash by our solution of online payments. That's very huge. That's a good impact. Most of the data I was telling to you was sourced by Euromonitor and some internal information too, just to clarify. And to be brief, my conclusion is that we foster development in the region. We're very happy to say that we have been created 6 new jobs per hour in the region since the beginning of the pandemic. We also create jobs for 17 industries related to our ecosystem. For example, logistics, transportation, warehouse. And it's important to say that 85% of our sellers maintained or created jobs during the pandemic. So that's very, very huge. And we have a good number also that 900,000 families lived from the sales in Mercado Livre. So it's very important to us, this number. Some years ago, it was 600,000. Now it's 900,000. We will reach 1 million soon. And for the future, we just to continue developing this innovation and bringing this innovation to the population of Latin America is our DNA. We believe with the more penetration of smartphones, we could have a better reach of the population. More than 75% of the transactions are made by mobile phones. The implementation of 5G networks, it's always a factor that can foster this development, this inclusion. And to end, we are very proud to contribute to our mission and to the development of Latin America and to transform the lives of this population, always with a focus in inclusion, ESG, and non-discrimination. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you a lot, Ricardo, for your presentation. It's good to see that Mercado Livre is growing faster and is in many countries in Latin America. We have some other questions here we'll make at the end of the panel as well. Now I would like to give the floor to Daniela.
Thank you, Leandro. Thank you, Ricardo and Annabelle, for these great and insightful presentations. So I would like to dedicate my time here today to provide a developing country and especially, of course, Brazil's experience and perspectives relating to digital trade. I'll start by sharing my screen. I prepared the presentation for today. Okay, so you can all see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Classic question. Okay, so I would like to start on the definition of digital trade and electronic commerce. And although there is not a single and recognized definition of digital trade, we have a huge and growing consensus that it encompasses digitally enabled transactions of either trading goods and services, and they can be either digitally or physically delivered. And of course, it involves consumers, firms, and governments. We also have this definition of electronic commerce, It was established by the WTO members in 1998 when they established the WTO Working Group on Electronic Commerce. And it conveys the same idea that now we understand by digital trade, which is the production, the distribution, marketing, sale, or delivery of goods and services by electronic means. So regardless of the definition of digital trade or electronic commerce that we choose to use, underpinning all of these is the movement or the flow of data. This graph shows how internet traffic has evolved in the last 30 years. I won't get into the details of how many gigabytes are going back and forth, but what is impressive, and I would like to highlight, is that the internet traffic has increased 1,000-fold in the last 20 years. And although the pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation, in 2019, the digital transformation was already a fact. So we have a definition of digital trade or electronic commerce, and we know it is, and we know we're talking about the movement of data. But what are we talking about when we talk about digital trade? I usually like to categorize digital trade in 4 ways. So there is digital trade per se, which is digitally enabled services. And these services are usually business services or computer and related services. And then they have already been recognized or understood as non-tradable services, but digital technologies have made this trading these services possible. So we can use it as examples telemedicine and many kinds of professional services, such as accounting, consulting, and etc. I have even heard of online babysitters from Rwanda to kids in Japan during these pandemic times. And Annabelle has provided many other examples for us. Digital trade also involves data-driven innovative services, such as cloud computing and services that use big data and the Internet of Things. For example, we can think about field monitoring and smart machinery and devices. The second category would be electronic commerce. And this is directly related to parcels trade. So this one is digitally enabled, but physically delivered. So we're talking about trading goods. And this involves online platforms, e-payment solutions, and logistics so that parcels can travel and cross borders. This category is especially important one for SMEs. And Annabelle and Ricardo have talked a lot about this. And this one is a special important one for developing countries. There is also a category that I like to categorize, which is digital trade facilitation. So it involves how this digitalization can help and facilitate trade. It involves not only paperless trading or the exchange of electronic documents, but also, for example, the use of artificial intelligence on risk management at the border. And last but not least, of course, digital trade involves the necessary infrastructure for connecting people and businesses, such as cables and specialized telecommunications apparatus. ICT goods and services play a critical role in enabling access to digital networks. This category is another especially important one for developing countries that need to bridge the digital divide. At this point, I'm proud to say that Brazil has made considerable progress in this area. We have increased by 3 times the share of population that is connected to the internet in the last 15 years, although we still have a lot to accomplish. Just recently, last week, Anatel, our national telecommunications agency, published the notice for the 5G auction. Picking up on Brazil's experience and developments on digital trade, and having these 4 categories that I mentioned in mind, I would like to highlight some of the recent Brazilian experiences and initiatives relating to digital trade. Brazil has been including e-commerce or digital trade commitments in all its recent trade agreements. We have signed the trade agreement with Chile in 2018 that has a very modern and robust e-commerce chapter. The EU-Mercosur agreement also contains commitments and provisions on e-commerce. And we have signed this year an agreement on e-commerce within Mercosur with our Mercosur countries. I would also like to emphasize the Brazil-US protocol on trade rules that we signed last year. Although it does not contain a digital trade chapter, our trade facilitation chapter contains very robust and modern commitments on the use of digital technologies to help and enhance trade facilitation. On our ongoing negotiations, we have, of course, the WTO negotiations on e-commerce, and also our negotiations with Canada, Korea, and Singapore that all include digital trade or e-commerce chapter. At the OECD, and relating to Brazil's accession to the OECD, we have two important initiatives. The OECD Secretariat is conducting a digital trade review of Brazil. It will be the first digital trade review of the organization, and we expect it will be concluded by the end of this year, providing many important and relevant insights in the area. The organization also provides a tool for information and regulations affecting digital trade, which is the Digital STRI, or the Digital Services Trade Restrictiveness Index. It catalogs and quantifies barriers affecting trade in digitally enabled services across 50 countries. The barriers are divided into 5 categories: infrastructure, electronic transactions, payment systems, intellectual property rights, and other barriers affecting trade in digitally enabled services. Brazil has moved up 7 positions last year in the digital STRI, which means less regulatory restrictions are applied to digital trade. And we are working on moving up some more positions next year. Brazil is also engaged in bilateral cooperation on digital trade with some key trade partners. The Brazil-US Commercial Dialogue, a partnership within the Department of Commerce in the United States and the Brazilian Ministry of the Economy, just recently established a working group on the digital economy. And we have, of course, cooperation and dialogues relating to digital trade with our Mercosur and ALADI, the Latin America Association for Integration. In Mercosur, for example, in addition to the e-commerce agreement we signed this year, we have signed an agreement on mutual recognition of electronic signatures in 2019. Moving on to goods and tariffs. In the beginning of this year, Brazil has promoted tariff reductions on ICT goods. Some of the products we have that have had its tariff reduced were cell phones, notebooks, personal computers, and many other ICT goods that play a key role in the digitalization of trade and the economy. Regarding the digitalization of trade facilitation, Brazil has 2 initiatives of utmost importance. Portal Único, which is the Brazilian single window, and which is in its last stages of implementation, and that has been revolutionizing Brazil's bureaucratic procedures related to trade, playing a key role in digitalizing documents, certificates, and the payment of license fees. And we also have Global Trade Hub, a digital solution to improve SMEs' participation in international trade, with the support of the British government and the partnership of public and private institutions. The Global Trade Hub is expected to be concluded by the end of next year. It will be a digital marketplace that will integrate a wide range of export services, from export training and market access initiatives to customs, logistics, and financing services. It is unfortunate that Francisco couldn't be here today because Connect Americas is one of our partners in the program. So moving ahead to my concluding remarks, we have seen here today not only from my speak and also Annabelle and Ricardo, that digital trade is changing rapidly the scale, scope, and the speed of trade. These changes were already happening at incredible speed, and the pandemic has only accelerated these changes. Digital trade provides many opportunities, especially for developing countries. Online platforms and solutions can help SMEs to engage in international trade. There is also a wide space for startups and innovative services, and data-driven solutions can boost productivity in many areas, such as field monitoring, additive manufacturing, and big data applied to agriculture. However, digital trade also provides many challenges. Different data regulations across countries can work as barriers to the flow of data and hamper the benefits of digitalization. There is also the challenge of measuring digital trade, as the statistics are key for designing good policies. The challenge of internet connectivity around the world, and the need for bridging the digital divide. And finally, the need for updating trade rules and commitments in a way to reflect trade in the digital era. As my final remarks, I would emphasize the need for countries to engage with each other in a cooperative and creative way to harness the full potential of the digitalization of the world economy. Developing countries should also focus on investing in digital connectivity and infrastructure. And that's what I had for today. I'm happy to take any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. It was very good to hear you and see all the work you are doing at the Ministry of Economy. And now I will pass for some questions. I start with one question for Annabelle. The logistical costs of cross-border e-commerce are still very high, mainly affect SMEs in developing countries. What policies could governments and the international community implement to reduce these costs and facilitate the insertion of SMEs in global electronic commerce?
Thank you, Leandro. So first of all, I'd like to say I'm not a policy person. I come from the private sector, and my work at ITC is squarely with businesses. So of course, policy, I know about policy, and policy is important in framing the discussion. And it's important for the regulation to be conducive for private sector partners and logistics providers to be able to work in the country. So one of the countries that I work in, for example, in Tajikistan, the conditions were not conducive for international logistics company to be within the country. And so it was near impossible for small businesses to even consider using e-commerce because they could not ship their goods out of the country. Beyond that, we know that it's true, the cost is still very, very high. We work, like I said, with one of our major partners is DHL, and we work with them to negotiate reduced rates. So as a business, I myself did it. You need to go to the large providers and negotiate the rates. You shouldn't take the main rate as the one that's the default one. Obviously, that will depend to some extent on the volume that you're looking to export or to send with that provider. And it's possible sometimes to collate or to create cooperatives of businesses so that they can increase that volume. But beyond that, it's very much a private sector environment. So it's difficult for me to say any more with regards to what governments can do, apart from just facilitating their good business practices.
Thank you a lot. We have another one asking if ITC has a specific project in Latin America.
So we do. So one of our big programs, you may have heard of it, is called She Trades, which works specifically at supporting women-owned businesses in international commerce. And we've got a project in the pipeline called She Trades Latin America that will be working more broadly in Latin America. So obviously I've talked to you about the one with Central America, and here we're looking to include more countries and to work more specifically in that region, yes.
Thank you for clarifying. I have a question for Ricardo here. Actually, two questions, Ricardo. First of all, in how many countries Mercado Livre working now? And are there any perspectives to go to other countries outside Latin America?
Thank you. We are in 18 countries in Brazil. And for this moment, we are focusing on Latin America. We believe we have still a great opportunity to develop the region. We have the penetration of e-commerce is still about 15% of the retail. So we continue to focus in the region. For the future, I cannot say, but for the region and immediately we will focus on the opportunity that we have in the region.
That's perfect, Ricardo. We have another one about cell phones. You comment a little bit about cell phones. Does Mercado Livre believe that the popularization of cell phones in Latin America was a necessary factor for the increase of e-commerce?
For sure. As I said, more than 75% of the transactions are made by cell phones. Today, the cell phone is cheaper than a laptop. You have the mobility, you have all the apps, you can do everything. So at any time, at any place. So it's important, as Daniela said, we have more cover in networks, more internet for the people. This will bring this development for all the regions in our countries.
Thank you, Ricardo. Daniela, we have one question for you. Brazil has positioned itself in a prominent position on the e-commerce joint initiative at the WTO. As disclosed by the group, several texts are already closed, only a few chapters remain open. How do you see the negotiation proceeding? Brazil is also negotiating an electronic commerce agreement with the United States. Has such treat progressed in the last months?
Okay, so first, regarding the JSI, the e-commerce negotiations at the WTO, these negotiations are going well. During the pandemic, the meetings had to stop for about 3 months before everyone got going in this digital manner. But now we, as even the question mentioned, we have a lot of articles already agreed. So I see these negotiations going well. Of course, they won't be concluded by the next MC12, but I see them moving at a good speed, and I hope we can deliver well soon a good progress. And relating to the negotiations with the US, yes, the protocol we signed last year regarding trade rules and transparency with the US, it was supposed to include a digital trade chapter, but it was not possible to get into a conclusion of this chapter by the time we expected to sign the protocol. The protocol provides space for new chapters. We have a chapter on good regulatory practices, a chapter on anti-corruption, and one on trade facilitation, and we have space for more chapters. We have already, since the US administration changed, we have already begin negotiations and talks on other topics. So these negotiations are a little bit paralyzed for the moment.
Thank you for clarifying. We have another one, Daniela, regarding Mercosur. Is there any debate about applying specific duties on digital trade in Mercosur?
The agreement we signed this year with the Mercosur, it's publicly available. It includes a commitment on not applying customs duties on electronic transactions. So I would say there is not.
Great. Mambel, we have another one for you. One of the biggest bottlenecks we encounter in measuring the e-commerce sector is access to data. Some studies have nationally helped us to understand the market, but when related to cross-border e-commerce, it's hard to find data. Is there any initiative to provide trade statistics to e-commerce operations? And what are the challenges in this field?
Thank you. Yes, for sure. And Daniela touched on this a little bit. There isn't, I mean, we're only coming to the point where we're starting to agree on the definitions of what we're talking about when we're talking about e-commerce. Obviously, there's a WTO negotiations that we're all aware of. There's no universal definition of how to capture e-commerce data. So it's really country by country. I cited a number of statistics from our partner organization, UNCTAD. They do a lot of the collating of information with regards to e-commerce, and we can see, I was mentioning statistics that date back to 2018, and they're the latest statistics, but it just goes to show how difficult it is because they draw from a range of different data, and it's that there's so again that there is no uniform way to get this information, and it does hinder the review of this field and to be able to capture the opportunity and what's actually happening on the ground country by country. But again, I speak very much from a sort of capacity building at the enterprise level rather than policy work or data generally.
Thank you. Ricardo, we have another question for you. How has the platform adapted to ensure the security of both consumers and the sellers for cross-border e-commerce transactions?
Thank you for the question. First of all, the trust is in the basis of our business. No one will buy anything for another seller that the people doesn't know without trust. No one will make a deposit in our accounts without trust. So we have developed a program that is called Compra Garantida, and it's a warranty. The consumer, not only for the cross-border, but for 100% of the transactions, the consumer has the right to claim for the money back if the product is not okay, and the seller the same. If the product did not reach the seller or is there any problem, we also guarantee the security for the seller, for both parties.
That's great. Thank you for clarifying. Daniela, we have another one for you. Is Brazil negotiating any new digital trade agreement?
Yes, we don't have a new digital trade agreement per se being negotiated, but we have this digital trade or e-commerce chapters. So we have been negotiating e-commerce chapters with Korea, Singapore, and Canada, and also, of course, at the WTO.
Thank you, Daniela. Well, we are running out of time. We have 3 minutes to go. So I just want to thank you the participation of all panelists. I will give the word for each of you. If you have final remarks. Annabelle, please.
Thank you, Leandro, for the opportunity to share the point of view of the SMEs in digital trade. So this is really what we try to be a voice for all the businesses that we work for. So at a policy level, things can improve. And of course, with regards to the questions that were being fielded, it's very much things will improve when the ecosystem improves. So we see how things have developed incredibly in the last 18 months, and how many countries have had a huge shift in the way that they buy and sell goods. And that's all incredibly conducive to a better environment, which makes it easier for businesses to do what they need to do because the services that they need become available. There's marketplaces that come about, logistics companies that are developed and provide the services that the businesses really need to be successful. So that's my concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for participating in our panel and for sharing so rich information with us during the panel. Ricardo, please have your final remarks.
Thank you very much. It's important to say that the technology is here to help us. We don't need to be afraid of technology. We need to believe that in the transactions in the companies, trust is necessary. And for us, the pandemic was very sad, but was an opportunity to prove that companies like us are in good position to bring this development and to help people, especially in this kind of situation.
Thank you a lot, Ricardo, for your participation. Daniela, please, your final remarks as well.